Hello and welcome to SiriusCon, the online conference on graphical modeling. I'm Cedric Bon. It's an honor for me to be here and to be part of the first day of the conference. And I'm glad and excited to share this moment with you. Dimitris kicked off the event quite nicely, and I have the pleasure to present you this talk about the state of Sirius, where we are and where we are going. And in order to understand where we are going and where we are, I'll start with the history of the project, where we are from. I get back quite a few years ago. In 2007, Thales and Obeo started to work on a technology enabling the creation of domain-specific graphical modelers. In 2013, after 6 years of development, it was decided to make it open source within the Eclipse Foundation. We are now 8 years after this publication, and the project had numerous releases and events since this first publication. Last year, we did the first publication of Sirius Web, and I'll get back on that during the talk. The approach we had to create domain-specific modelers was quite novel and had pretty strong principles. A domain model description in echo on the left, where you describe entities, their attributes, their types, and the relationships between those entities. For instance, if you have a domain-specific language to create families, so you'll have a person entity with a first name and last name attribute, maybe date of birth, and a parent relationship to other persons. That's what you define into the domain model. And you define and describe the workbench in the Sirius configuration, which is in the middle of the slide here. In this model, you describe, I want an editor of type table. So I want a table to list all the persons and to edit the name and first name. And I want the color of the text to look this way depending on this value in the model. I want a diagram to display a family. And this shape should represent a person. And this relationship should represent the parent relationship, and so on. And you describe the complete behavior of the tooling in this model. What should happen when the user edit the text of a shape? What should happen when you use this palette entry on the diagram, and so on. And from these two definitions, the domain model and the Sirius configuration, then the Sirius runtimes interpret this information at runtime and give the end user an environment, the actual designer, the actual modeler, which is completely tailored for its domain and analysis. And the dynamic interpretation is one of the strong principles. It gives fast turnaround, quick results, and it means the specifier can focus on the workbench itself and the user experience. You can try something, see how it goes in a matter of minutes, not hours. It doesn't have to generate code, it doesn't have to make it compile. And since day one, this dynamic and interpreted nature could be extended through custom code, but only when needed, not for, I would say the 80% of the work. Eclipse Sirius rely on Eclipse and Eclipse-based technologies, Eclipse modeling technologies, and GMF, and so on. And it can be delivered as add-ons to Eclipse, plugins, or as a standalone product. And those are the pretty strong principles. When we did open source project with Thales, the project was a small sprout at the time. And we were excited to share it with the community, but we had no idea how it would grow as a project. And that's one of the things with open source. When you build it, you never really know if it's used, how it's used, and who use it. In order to allow the users of Sirius to showcase what they were building with it, we did set up a web page that we call the Sirius Gallery. with an open process so that anybody can easily add his own entry into the Sirius gallery. To this day, this gallery showcases more than 50 different modeling tools with varying degrees of richness or complexity. Some pretty small tight tools, maybe one graphical modeler and one small DSL with a dozen of entities. Some others covering wider domains with several graphical views, tables, and form editors. So there's wide breadth of, of complexity and in the tool which are listed on the Sirius gallery. And these tools are covering many sectors from system engineering to simulation, big data, business analysis, cyber security, healthcare, you name it. Any area where designing with the power of models gives huge benefits most likely has an example of a modeler based on Sirius on the gallery. And here on the left, or on the right, sorry, you can see that I did highlight the latest editions which came up in the last few months. A modeler for Amazon Web Services, a modeler for healthcare, another one for risk analysis and cyber security, and last one for software development. And those are just the ones which can be publicly listed. In 2015, we started to organize SiriusCon events in order to gather with this community and to meet this community in Paris. And well, the events were great successes. It was a lot of fun to be in Paris together. But as the community was getting more and more international, we wanted to make it available for many more people, more accessible. And we did held the first SiriusCon live event on the internet in 2018. And it's been a big success and growing ever since with hundreds of participants. So welcome again. Thanks for being part of this event. As I said earlier, you never know what's going to happen when you publish a project like this one. You publish code, technology, you help users or developers. Basically, you do share a lot and have very few feedback of what's going on. But that's why I find it really, really exciting when what we're doing, what we're sharing triggers more sharing in return. Dozens of presentations have been made at SiriusCon and are publicly available on the website. Technical insights, return of the experience. And I'd like to take a moment to especially thank the speaker for doing this share and this sharing of knowledge, because it has an impact for many other users out there getting this level of information. It would be really hard to get it. And participating into SiriusCon and publishing this information really is useful for the community. Speaking of impacts, well, Sirius helps many innovate in the way they design or analyze things. And it's also a great source of pleasure to us that it's being used in research and academic settings and might contribute modestly, honestly, really, really modestly, but might contribute in science. What do I mean by we, by the way? Well, this we is Obeo, and our history is fairly linked to the history of the Eclipse Series project. Our mission, well, is to put the power of models at work pragmatically and in as many hands as possible, building technologies for the long term through open source, so that you can build innovations, so that you can design your system, so that you can design your software. Well, we are based in France and in Canada, but we work with many companies all over the world. We are a software vendor and technology provider, helping you build innovation using modeling tools. So our activity starts pretty early. Well, first we are helping this community to grow. We organize events like this one, publish information, everything that makes Sirius and its benefits more discoverable to more people. Pretty early, we provide trainings to customers to assist them in learning the best practices in building a workbench and provide expertise. You have a question, an issue, you need assistance, you can talk directly with the expert, even with the committers of the Eclipse Sirius project. A topic of interest might then become a project, and most likely will start by a proof of concept phase. During that phase, we work with you in defining and developing the domain model, capturing in the best possible way the information, and get a model with a nice, clean structure which will be easy to evolve and extend. So from the domain model description on the left, well, which is defined by the tool developer, the specifier, then the end user gets this tree on the right with the instances. So for instance, we see that the go forward entity relates to 4 different instances on the right. And then we define the tooling with you through the workbench description. And this workbench description, as I said at the beginning, it defines how the graphical models should behave and what is the notation. So here, if you take the same grab example, you see that the shape is defined as an SVG. The edge in between the different steps of this language is defined with an edge which has a solid style, a specific color, which is gray here. And the behavior of the tool in the palette is defined and described directly into this model to create new instance of go forward when you click on the palette, on the diagram background. Often at this phase, at this stage, there are integrations with other tools which are envisioned and have to be validated. Most of the time, it's not that easy to integrate tools. Often you also start to have a pretty clear idea of other requirements like performance and scalability. Or when a customer has no clear idea yet, we explore that through prototypes. And sometimes through the development of new features directly within the open source project, what we call sponsored features. In the upcoming SiriusCon talk, during the 3 days, you'll see a few of these features in action, sponsored by users of the technology. Then your project move to the pilot phase. Pilot means you develop a minimum viable product and you deploy and test it on real-world project in an adequate context. What is an adequate context, you might ask? Well, you want a team which is motivated in an environment which is pretty classic, with a schedule which is under control and not too risky. You don't want to test and do your first tool evaluation in real in a project which is risky by nature. What you want is mature the approach and the tool and not put more risk on a project which already is risky. At this phase, we focus on the tool's development itself, on the best practices, on introducing test procedures. That's usually when slightly more advanced features of Sirius are used. Validation with quick fixes, layers, filters within the diagrams, conditional styles so that the colors adapt depending on how the model evolves and what are the value into the model, or richer property and form view, which are, I would say, the basic set of features that you always end up using when you start going for a real life deployment. That's also at this point that we might need to go deeper on underlying frameworks like EMF, the cornerstone of any integration with other Eclipse modeling technologies, or decide to bring textual syntax to your language, embedded in your graphical editor, or maybe used as a serialization of your model. To generate text or code, defining templates with Axelio, or generate documents from the model with M2Doc. Then comes the industrialization. Focus then more on release engineering, automation, stress tests. For such phases, Obeo, besides the expertise and development services, provides granted and private support. And the Obeo Designer team add-on to bring seamless concurrent editing to your workbench. Think about it like Google Doc on your models. Seamless concurrent editing. Public examples of complete workbench, which I would say are definitely in the industrialization phase, are, for instance, Well, Capella, an open source solution from Eclipse, developed by Thales to cover system design and architecture, which is having a very, very high adoption in the open source communities. Information system designer, which is an interesting one also, it covers many areas of the software design, from the user needs, requirements to the domain entities, the API, components definition, and even in its latest evolution, it covers UI mockups. It's all captured in the model, and when suitable, it generates the corresponding code. So that's a pretty cool project. It's on GitHub. You can check it out. Obeo itself provides the Smart EA tool, which supports enterprise architecture activities through the Archimate notation to capture an organization structure, the business process, the IT infrastructure, and to conduct change and impact analysis on it. And obviously, Smart EA, well, it's a product we provide on off the shelf as a commercial offer, and it's all industrialized with tests and integrations and so on. That's just a few examples. But in a nutshell, Obeo might help you in all those phases of your project, from the ideation to the large-scale deployment. And we've been doing that for many years now. That the company is 15 years old with many customers. And these projects are making us grow, build a consolidated and integrated vision based on what we experience from customer to customer. And all those activities, from the beginning to the deployment, to the large-scale deployment, all these activities are instrumental in building a vision which is for the long term, and through those technologies and components we've seen before, like EMF, Axilio, M2Doc, and so on. Along the way, we've participated and contributed in a rich ecosystem. And last year, we published a new component, a missing piece in the ecosystem, which is, well, Sirius Web. So first, you might ask, why going to the web? What's the point? Well, I'll get back to the mission. I see this component as an accelerator regarding our mission. Accessing the web for a modeling tool means seamless deployment. Seamless deployment means easier access to end user, to many more end user, access also to huge and dynamic technological ecosystems. There's tons of libraries and capabilities in the web browsers these days. It also brings up many new integration possibilities. And it's the perfect time to refine the user experience of a workbench. So do you recall the principle I've shown earlier? The domain model on the left plus the Sirius configuration, you get a graphical model as a desktop application. Well, with Sirius Web, it's still the same, except that from the domain model and the workbench description, now we get a web application. So that's basically it. And because there are so many things which are described into the Sirius configuration, there are also a lot of things which can just directly translate into the web support. And here comes Sirius Web. It's built on the same principles, yet available on modern cloud-based stack. Well, it's going to be well covered during this event, and you'll have a few talks to discover it a bit more. It's been published within Eclipse. Everything is on GitHub, and currently consider it a start. It can do quite a lot of things already, cover many use cases, editing models through diagrams, trees, and it did improve a lot in the last 12 months. Yet, each step we make opens more possibilities, and the work we conduct through customers' project is critical for us in advancing quickly in the areas with the most potential. Also know that we've been working on what we call Obeo Cloud Platform, which brings enterprise features to Sirius Web. Features like project visibility, teams management, access control, LDEP support, and obviously granted support. Pretty much the same business model we had with Sirius Desktop and Obeo Designer, with the same safeguards. You can launch and deploy Sirius Web in autonomy under your terms, and you can benefit from these additional features by going for the commercial version without being technically tied to it. Let's get back a little on what has been going on in the last year from a technical point of view. Well, the team have been pretty active with 9 releases, a very regular schedule. Maintenance releases, small arrows, and well, major releases, which are the big ones. Bringing bug fixes and enhancement in both Sirius Web and Sirius Desktop. Let's start with Sirius Desktop. In Sirius Desktop, the most notable changes are improvement to the auto layout algorithm powered by ELK, the Eclipse layout kernel, which is often a huge boost in productivity to arrange a diagram automatically. The team worked also on performance, more especially on response time, and the most notable improvements are on the sequence diagrams. Also, new mechanisms have been introduced to allow for smarter layout and style information transfer in between diagrams of different types. So think about it this way. So you can transfer style layout information, the position of elements from a diagram to another one which doesn't have the same definition, but you can be smart about it and map element and so retrieve the layout into the other diagram. Now on the web front, layout there has been an important topic because Sirius Web started as an auto layout only graphical editor with a diagram layout preventing overlap. And that's one of my favorite. When the end user move a shape, just like in the video you see, when you move a shape, the other ones are, well, making room, and so that you get a nice, you avoid any overlap. But much more features were added. Forced support for list containers, form-based editor directly in the web, domain-specific representation based on other frameworks, the ability to embed Sirius Web within another web application. So all promising steps toward the future. And each step further opens more possibilities. And I'm quite excited by what's coming up in the future as it aligns 100% with the mission I shared with you at the beginning of this talk. Firstly, we are going to work on having a deeper integration with web-based IDEs. IDEs like Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, TR, maybe Jupyter Lab. And this is important from a technological point of view as it makes Sirius Web relevant in such environments. Secondly, and this one is fairly exciting to me, we are moving forward toward the ability to define your workbench completely directly from Sirius Web. That's what we call the full web definition. Your domain model, your workbench description directly defined through your web browser without the need of an external SDK, without the need of coding, of having an IDE. And this means delivering the ability to define and deploy modeling tool, even though the modeling tool might have slightly less capabilities, but it means delivering this ability to more ends. Think about it. All you did is then a web browser, and you can specify your domain model, some graphical representation, and your user can start using it right away. You have the power of modeling behind your perfectly tailored tool in a matter of minutes. We used to have the ability to create the tool in a matter of minutes. Now you have the ability to create the tool and deploy it and use it in a matter of minutes. And the whole team can use it. The third topic I wanted to emphasize during this talk is model migration. That's always been an important topic in the modeling community. How do you change your domain structure and make it as seamless as possible for the user? Because obviously when we provide full web definition, so the specifier can easily change the domain model directly on the web, we expect specifiers to do it more often, to rename person to people, for instance. So what happened then? And we want to give them complete control over what's going on while moving from a version to another one. But we also want to avoid any unnecessary complexity. So we want to provide a default behavior which makes sense and which guarantee that you're never gonna lose some information, because we want to avoid any risk of data loss. These are three topics coming up next, which I think are really interesting in shaping a longer term vision. But there have been many more topics tackled in the last year. Layouts, integration with collaborative softwares like Nextcloud, reuse of specific representation, among other improvements. And I'm really grateful to all the clients supporting these activities and working with us in expanding this modeling platform. Thanks, really, because it makes us move forward, it makes the platform move forward, and as it's open source, it moves forward for all the users out there. Even though I could go on for hours and hours, I have to be brief, but you'll see that and much more with demos, videos and demos, and well, all the technical information you might need or you might want during Melanie's keynote tomorrow. So really book your time to attend this keynote, because then you'll get the meat of what I quickly showed you in a couple of slides and what has been going on Sirius Desktop and web. Well, in a nutshell, thanks for being part of this work, and look at the impact the project had in these 9 years and what the impact it continued to have while evolving. We, Obeo, are here for the long term, for software that lasts. And we love doing that, and we love doing that with you. I hope you will enjoy the conference. Thank you.